News of the Times. Murder on Wimbledon Common. The poker killing of Captain Tighe in 1917. Welcome to News of the Times. Wimbledon Common, 1917. A quiet November morning turns into a waking nightmare when a maid at Winkfield Lodge opens a bedroom door and finds retired army officer Captain Edward Tighe lying broken and bloodied on the floor. The weapon? A fireplace poker bent by the sheer force of the attack. The victim still breathing but barely, and within days dead. But this wasn't just another wartime tragedy. It sparked a full-scale manhunt, and soon Scotland Yard was tracking a suspect with many names, a violent record, and a story that didn't quite hold up. Was there really a second man, as he claimed, or was it all a desperate lie to save his own neck? From the blood-stained bedroom to a dramatic arrest on Vine Street, this is the case that proved even in wartime, Scotland Yard didn't rest until they got their man. And in today's end of episode for the particular segment, we turn from murder to matrimony, or at least an Edwardian attempt at it. A 50-year-old woman places a leap year advert in search of love. What she receives instead are 6 responses, each more ridiculous than the last. Among them, a sporting gentleman, possibly a poacher, a rendezvous marked by a red silk handkerchief, and a man who claimed to be musical, scholarly and rich, but turned out to be none of the above and possibly unwell. Yes, long before Tinder and Go Fish, romance in 1917 came with atrocious spelling, misleading resumes, and a definite risk of being non-compos mentis. So, pour yourself something bracing and join us as we explore the curious world of Edwardian crime and romance. London, 1917. The city is at war. The skyline may still be stitched with church spires and chimney pots, but below, the rhythm of life has changed. Soldiers on leave wander the streets in muddied uniforms, some missing limbs, others missing comrades. Children queue for bread. Women line up at munitions factories, their fingers stained with cordite and their eyes fixed ahead, because looking back is too costly now. Zeppelin raids have turned night into a time of anxious silence. Blackout curtains are pinned tight, while the distant boom of anti-aircraft guns keep many from sleep. At the train stations, endless goodbyes echo beneath soot-darkened girders. Meat is scarce, coal is rationed, spirits are frayed. Even in respectable districts like Wimbledon, genteel villas sit under a blanket of tension. Curtains twitch. Strangers are eyed twice, and yet life continues. The newsboys still shout the headlines, the pubs still hum, and behind closed doors, private dramas play out. Some of them tragic, some criminal, and some too horrifying to ignore. It's into this unsettled London, fractured by war, weighted by worry, that we now turn our lens, because in a quiet house on the edge of Wimbledon Common, a brutal act is about to shake even the most battle-weary hearts. This wasn't the first time trouble had come creeping through the quiet streets of Wimbledon. In the weeks leading up to the bloody murder found on a bedroom floor in a well-to-do neighbourhood, a string of unnerving break-ins had begun to plague the area. These weren't smash-and-grab burglaries. They were quiet, precise and calculated. In every case, the pattern was the same. No weapon brought in from outside, but something disturbingly domestic used instead. A poker taken from the fireplace downstairs turned into a tool of intrusion. Drawers were forced open, locks jimmied, valuables disturbed, the comfort of home violated using the very objects meant to bring warmth. No one had been blamed, not yet, but a sense of unease was building, because this wasn't just burglary, it was personal, intimate, as though someone had slipped the latch not just on the door, but on the safety of the everyday. And when Captain Edward Tighe was found bloodied and broken besides a bent fireplace poker, the unsettling pattern turned deadly. From the Cambridge Daily News, the 14th of November 1917. An attempt on the life of a retired army officer was discovered on Tuesday at Wimbledon. The victim is Captain Edward Tighe, who is 54 years of age and lives with his wife and family at Winkfield Lodge, Parkside, facing Wimbledon Common. At 7:30 in the morning he was found unconscious in his bedroom. There were lacerated wounds on his head, and on the floor was a stained poker which seems to have been bent by the force of blows. 2 doctors were called in, pronounced Captain Tighe to be in a critical condition. The injured officer was attended by Dr. Collier and Dr. Harvey, but had not yet yesterday recovered consciousness so as to be able to give particulars of his assailant. Winkfield Lodge stands on its own grounds facing the common. Next door is Wrestle Lodge, inhabited by Belgian refugees. Outside this house a constable is stationed day and night, and nothing was heard by him. No motive has been disclosed for the attack, and nothing is missing. No clue to the tragedy had been obtained by the police, who were hoping to be able to obtain a statement from Captain Tighe. Neither Mrs. Tighe nor the maid heard any unusual sound during Monday night, and the discovery was made by the maid at 7:30 a.m. on Tuesday. But this was no ordinary murderous attempt. The location, Wimbledon Common, was genteel, respectable, a place of well-kept homes and clipped hedges, where violence felt unthinkable, and the victim, a decorated former army officer, brought the story thundering into national headlines, even as the horrors of war filled the front pages. With no obvious motive, no forced entry, and no clear suspect, Scotland Yard was quickly called in. Chief Inspector Goff took charge of the case, combing through the crime scene for anything that might point to the killer. The problem? The clues were very few. Captain Tighe never regained consciousness. The house, while ransacked, showed no major signs of theft. Just 2 missing watches, a missing Macintosh, and a poker bent nearly double with the force of the attack. But Goff had a theory. A wave of recent burglaries in the area had shared a sinister hallmark. In each case, the only tool used was a poker taken from the very home being robbed. No broken windows, no crowbars, just the quiet removal of a fireside object, and then forced drawers, jimmied locks, and an eerie familiarity with domestic space. If Captain Tighe's murder was connected, then the key to solving it wasn't in the bloodied room at Winkfield Lodge, but out in the city, wherever those missing watches had gone. And soon that trail would lead Scotland Yard to a man with a false name, a growing list of aliases, and a very suspicious pair of trousers. From the Westminster Gazette, the 13th of December 1917, Wimbledon Mystery. a soldier charged with the murder of Captain Tighe. At Wimbledon Police Court before Mr. G. H. Clark, Victor de Stamier, 28, was charged with the murder of Captain E. V. Tighe at Winkfield Lodge, Wimbledon Common, by striking him on the head with a poker. Chief Inspector Goff from Scotland Yard said that in conjunction with other police officers he visited Winkfield Lodge on Saturday, November the 17th, and saw the body of Captain Tighe. He stated, "I had the crime reconstructed by the maidservant, who will be called, and who was the first to find the deceased. Numerous inquiries have been made, and at 4 p.m. yesterday I went to Streatham Police Station and saw the accused man, who was brought from the cells to a room. I said, 'The officers investigating the case of Captain Tighe found in your possession an envelope in the name of Ray, giving a certain address. They went there, and afterwards to a certain number in that street, and in the trouser pocket of a pair of military breeches they found this watch with the name Angelus on the dial, on which had a certain number on it.' I produced another watch and said, 'This watch was found in a tin box with the clothes. Among the articles found in that room which you occupied were a khaki coat and a mackintosh. The mackintosh and the Angelus watch have been identified as proceeds of the burglary at Winkfield Lodge. It is my intention to charge you with the murder of Captain Tighe, and on that charge you will be taken to Wimbledon. I want to caution you that anything you say in answer will be taken down and may be used in evidence against you. You need not say anything. Do you want in any way to account for this watch and the mackintosh?' The prisoner said, 'No, sir.' I said, 'Do you want in any way to account for where you were on November the 12th? The prisoner said, 'I was at home that night.' Prisoner was conveyed to Wimbledon Police Station, and at 6:40 p.m. formally charged. He made no reply. On the way to the station between Streatham and Wimbledon in the private motor omnibus, he made a statement to me which I committed to writing at Wimbledon Police Station and showed it to him, and he read it afterwards and signed it. Inspector Goff said that he did not propose to give the statement at that moment and asked for a remand. The prisoner was asked if he had any questions to put and replied in the negative. 'All I want to ask,' he said, 'is for leave to get my defence.' The clerk advised him that it would be well for him to wait for further evidence. 'Very well,' he answered. In reply to the magistrate, Inspector Goff said that the prisoner was a French subject, but had been in this country for very many years, and to all intents and purposes was English. He was a corporal in the British Army and spoke English quite well. The prisoner was remanded until next Thursday. But what had led Scotland Yard to a man arrested for suspected burglary? The breakthrough came not through fingerprints or witness statements, but from a sharp-eyed jeweller. In nearby Streatham, one of the recent burglaries had yielded a handful of distinct items. Some of that jewellery soon turned up in a shop, sold by a man whose face and manner stuck firmly in the jeweller's mind. Days later, by sheer chance, the same man walked into another shop on Wardour Street, and this time the jeweller spotted him. He wasted no time. The police were called. A brief struggle followed, and the suspect, calling himself Arthur Gray, was taken into custody. Chief Inspector Goff, still chasing the slenderest of leads in the brutal attack on Captain Tighe, took notice. The use of pokers, the timing, the proximity, the missing watches. Goff believed there might be more to Mr. Gray than petty theft. And so, With the suspect now in custody, Goff made his way to Streatham police station to speak with the man himself, and what he uncovered would take the case in an entirely new direction. From the Morning Post, the 14th of December 1917, the death of Captain Tighe, soldier charged. At Wimbledon yesterday, Victor de Stamier, 28, a corporal in the British Army, was charged with the wilful murder of Captain Edward Bunbury Tighe by striking him on the head with a poker between 10:30 on the night of November the 12th and 7:30 on the morning of November the 13th at Winkfield Lodge, Wimbledon Park. Inspector Goff of Scotland Yard said that on November the 13th the police received a report that a burglary had been committed at the lodge and also that a murderous assault had been made on Captain Tighe. The occupier, who received serious injuries to the head and was found unconscious at 7:30 that morning in his bedroom, he remained unconscious and he died at 8:30 on the morning of November the 17th. Numerous inquiries have been made and at 4 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, witness went to Streatham police station and saw the prisoner, who had been arrested in connection with a burglary at Streatham. Prisoner was conveyed to Wimbledon police station and formally charged with the crime. He made no reply. Between Streatham and Wimbledon in the private motor omnibus, he made a statement to witness which was committed to writing at Wimbledon police station and signed by de Stamier, but it was not proposed to give it in evidence at that moment. With Arthur Gray now firmly identified as Corporal Victor de Stamier under arrest, Scotland Yard wasted no time. He was no longer just a suspect in a string of violent burglaries. The discovery of the Macintosh and the 2 stolen watches, both unmistakably traced back to Winkfield Lodge, had changed everything. Chief Inspector Goff's suspicion had been correct. This was no ordinary thief, now facing the gravest of charges, the brutal murder of Captain Edward Tighe. De Stamier was brought to court under his real name, and so the inquest took place, with missing items identified, damning evidence revealed, and a web of half-truths beginning to unravel. The man at the centre of it all, a charming, well-dressed soldier with a pocketful of aliases and a story that was about to fall apart. From the Morning Post, the 17th of December 1917, the death of Captain Tighe. Dr. Michael H. Taylor, resuming the inquiries at Wimbledon on Saturday afternoon into the circumstances surrounding the death of Captain Edward Bunbury Tighe, 55, and retired army officer, who was found unconscious with 8 serious wounds on his head in his bedroom at Winkfield Lodge, Parkside, Wimbledon Common, on the morning of November the 13th, and who died 4 days later without having regained consciousness. Victor de Stamier, 26, a corporal in the British Army, but a French subject, who has resided in this country since he was 3 years of age, and who had been remanded on a charge of murdering Captain Tighe, was present. Discovery of the crime. Eve May Parfitt, parlour maid at Winkfield Lodge, said that when she went to call Captain Tighe at 7:30 on the morning of November the 13th, she got no answer, although she knocked several times. As she entered the room, she heard a noise as if of a groan. She pulled up the blinds noisily to awaken the captain, and on turning round, she saw him lying on his back on the floor, and there was a pool of blood at his head and another on his pillow. Captain Tighe was in his pyjamas and dressing gown. His right leg was inside one of the bedposts, and the other was drawn up. The blood-stained poker produced belonged to the dining room set of fire irons, the mackintosh to a boy James engaged at Winkfield Lodge, and the watches, one with Angelus on the dial and the other with the name J.W. Benson, London, was similar to those she had seen in Captain Tighe's possession. With the exception of the poker, all these articles were issued from Winkfield Lodge on November the 13th. The bread and water usually taken by Captain Tighe during the night were not touched on the night of November the 12th to the 13th. Mrs. Tighe, the widow, stated that her husband took the bread and water at about 3:30 or 4 in the morning when his breathing affected him. On returning from a lecture in town at about 10:30 on the night of November the 12th, she saw her husband on the billiard room. She remained with him 20 minutes and then went to bed. Her room was on the same floor as her husband's, but she was not disturbed during the night. When called to the captain's room the following morning, she found him lying unconscious. She noticed blood on his head and saw one deep cut on the forehead. There were blood marks on the bed wall, furniture, and a picture. The watches produced were her husband's. He was a genial and generous man, and she knew of no person who had a grudge or spite against him, or that there was any cause for anyone to have either. The prisoner at Tooting Lodgings. Mrs. Rose McKinnon, the wife of a soldier from Totton Down Street in Tooting, related how the prisoner, whom she identified on October the 13th, took a room in her house and produced a paper which gave his name as Charles Edward Gray, soldier, City of London Yeomanry, from a camp near Canterbury. He told her he had come to be in touch with the military police, but he was in the CID and was engaged in shadowing deserters, and that his duties would keep him out all hours at night. He usually came in at 1 or 1:30 in the morning. He treated her in a proper manner and paid his way. He seemed to have plenty of money and told her his father was a wealthy Australian who allowed him a cheque each month. When accounts of the attack on Captain Tighe were published in the papers, the prisoner, known as Gray, discussed the matter with her and said it was a case of revenge. It was during the latter part of the week when these reports appear that Gray brought home the mackintosh produced. One morning she saw a watch similar to that produced but underneath Gray's pillow, and on another occasion she saw two watches similar to those produced in his room. She spoke about the watches to her husband, and he remarked it was a strange thing, but there should be a gunmetal watch and a mackintosh missing from Captain Tighe's house. Several key witnesses added to the emerging timeline. Miss Hilda Maybury, the former governess, had been sleeping in the room next to Captain Tighe's. She recalled being disturbed multiple times in the night by what sounded like heavy, laboured breathing, first around 1 in the morning and again at about 4:30, when she heard a noise like a distant door slamming shut. Had someone told her it was the sound of a body falling, she said she wouldn't have doubted it. Meanwhile, George James, a local country boy employed at Winkfield Lodge, reported that his coat had vanished, the same coat later found among the suspect's belongings. More troubling still, a study window he had personally closed and a back door he had bolted the night before were both found open the next morning. And finally, Private Neil McKinnon testified that Gray, as de Stamio had called himself, had brought up the attack on Captain Tighe in casual conversation, speculating that the motives might be revenge, perhaps that someone the captain had once sentenced or crossed. Bit by bit, The narrative was tightening, and the man at its centre was running out of room. From the Morning Post, the 31st of December 1917, the murder of Captain Tighe, verdict at inquest. Detective Sergeant Edwardian said that on December the 11th, he arrested de Stamier at Vine Street on another charge. With other officers, he visited a back room at Totterdown Road in Tooting and unlocked a large tin box which he found under the bed with a key which he discovered in the room. Inside was a khaki tunic, a pair of black shoes and a pair of khaki breeches, and in the pocket of which was an oxidised watch. A Macintosh and other oxidised watches were found also in the box. This watch has been identified as having belonged to Captain Tighe. Detective Inspector Beard, who examined the window which was found open at Winkfield Lodge, said that just underneath it was a footmark in the soil. He saw de Stamier in a cell at the police station and asked where he had been sleeping during the past month. The man replied, "I've nothing to tell you. If you've got anything up against me, it is your work to find out. I will tell you nothing." Witness demanded de Stamier's boots and took them away. A confession. Police Sergeant Smale said that when he was taking de Stamier from Streatham and Wimbledon, the man commenced to make a statement. After being cautioned, he said, "I entered the bedroom of Captain Tighe in company with another person. As the door opened, the hall clock struck the half hour, and it kind of woke up Captain Tighe, who moved his hand along the pillow. It was understood that he had a revolver there. My partner did not wait, but struck Captain Tighe several blows on the head with the poker. Captain Tighe fell forward and struck his head against the fireplace. The room was then searched, and we left Winkfield Lodge. On arriving at Brixton Prison, de Stamier put the statement into writing. De Stamier went into the witness box as Arthur Henry Victor de Stamier, and he was born in Paris on August the 21st, 1891. "I came to this country," he said, "when I was 5 years old. My father was a Frenchman, and I am a French subject. I am a corporal in the City of London Yeomanry, and I have heard the evidence of the witnesses, and I agree that the statement made by Police Sergeant is correct." His statement was handed to the accused man, who, after reading it, declared that it was correct and signed it. Medical evidence was given that death was the result of the number of blows on the head with the poker inflicted from behind. The coroner pointed out to the jury that de Stamier had said nothing about the man who was with him when the assault on Captain Tighe took place. However, if there had been 150 men there, and as the result of the blows Captain Tighe had died from, each man would have been responsible for the death. He did not think that Captain Tighe was struck when in bed. He expressed warm appreciation of the manner in which Chief Inspector Gough and other officers had worked the case. The clues were the slenderest, and their success had been remarkable. The jury returned a verdict of wilful murder against de Stamier, who was committed for trial. It was the other man. At his committal hearing in early January 1918, Arthur Harry Victor de Stamier, a 26-year-old corporal in the City of London Yeomanry, was formally charged with the murder of Captain Tighe. Representing the Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Percival Clark, outlined how de Stamier had been living under an assumed identity in Tooting, posing as an Australian CID officer shadowing a woman. His landlady, Mrs. Rose McKinnon, had grown suspicious when she discovered an oxidised watch matching one stolen from Winkfield Lodge beneath his pillow, and soon after he brought home a Macintosh, also later identified as belonging to the Tighe household. When asked in court what his defence would be, Destamier offered only one line: the murder was committed by the other man. In requesting the return of over £11 taken from him during arrest, roughly £800 in 2025, and was advised to apply for legal aid when facing trial at the Old Bailey. From the Pall Mall Gazette, the 10th of January 1918, Wimbledon murder trial. The accused man tells his story, says Australian killed Captain Tighe. Arthur Harry Victor Destamier, corporal of the City of London Yeomanry, pleaded not guilty before Mr. Justice Darling at the Old Bailey today to the murder of Captain Tighe at Winkfield Lodge on Wimbledon Common. Destamier gave evidence. Mr. Keeves, his counsel, inquired who was his partner. Destamier said he was an Australian soldier. I met him about October the 7th in the West End. He told me that he was on 7 days' leave and that his father was an editor in Sydney. We had a drink and a talk together, and I saw him again on the following evening at the corner of Westminster Bridge Road. I met him the next night too. We agreed together on November the 11th to commit a burglary. His name was Reginald Fisher. After I had known him for a few days, he told me he was a deserter from the army. He also told me he used to go into public houses and put opium in the glasses of Australians and Canadians. We chose the place of the burglary and decided that it should be Winkfield Lodge. We got in by the study window and went out into the hall. We searched the lower rooms. Fisher took the dining room poker with him and said, "We will take this in case we find any doors locked." We reached Captain Tighe's bedroom and Fisher opened the door. The hall clock struck 1/2 the hour, and Captain Tighe, who was lying in bed, sat up and made a movement with his hand along the pillow. Fisher did not wait for anything else. He struck Captain Tighe several blows on the head. Captain Tighe fell forward and struck his head on the fireplace. As soon as that happened, I went downstairs and unbolted the side door, and later Fisher rejoined me. I was waiting by the door. He said he had searched all the rooms and had found 2 watches. He gave them both to me and I put them in my pocket. I also had a mackintosh which he had taken from the kitchen door. We left Winkfield Lodge and parted at Putney High Street. It was then about 5 o'clock. The next time I saw Fisher was by appointment at Balham Station. Fisher remarked that there was accounts of the affair in the paper and that Captain Tighe was in a dangerous condition. He said it was advisable that we parted. I gave him 10 shillings for the mackintosh and said goodbye, and I've never seen him since. Mr. Keeves: have you attempted to see him again? Destamier: yes, I walked up and down Brook Street, but I did not know his number. I waited until late, but I never saw him. Destamier finished his testimony with the affirmation, I did not strike Captain Tighe. Verdict and desperation, the fall of Destamier. He took the jury little time to reach a conclusion. They found Victor Destamier guilty of murder of Captain Tighe and dismissed his claim that the killing had been committed by a mysterious second man, Fisher, as nothing more than fiction. The prisoner was the man who struck the blows, the jury foreman declared, and Fisher was a fictitious person. Sentenced to death by Mr. Justice Darling, the judge noted that the verdict had been reached on evidence that was perfectly plain. A last attempt to escape the noose. Scrambling to escape the tightening noose, Destamier filed for appeal, this time citing mental instability and alleged misdirection by the judge in not giving proper weight to his other man defence. He claimed new witnesses could speak to his state of mind, including his parents, a major and a local doctor, but the Criminal Appeal Court was unmoved. Mr. Justice Bray ruled there had been no misdirection and that the jury had been right to conclude D'Estamier had struck the fatal blows. His appeal was denied. From the Pall Mall Gazette, the 12th of February 1918, D'Estamier hanged. Remarkable career of crime. Arthur Harry Victor D'Estamier was hanged at Wandsworth Prison this morning for the murder of Captain Tighe at Winkfield Lodge, Wimbledon Common, on November the 30th. The brutal attack with a poker on Captain Tighe, whose house he had entered as a burglar, was the climax of a life of crime. Although only 25, D'Estamier had been under the notice of the police in some form or other since he was a boy. Before he was 14, he was bound over on a charge of stealing. Within a year, he was charged with burglary at Croydon and went to reformatory school. On his release, he disappeared from home, went to Australia and was imprisoned there for various offences. Returning to England, he enlisted in the County of London Yeomanry when war broke out, but twice deserted. 3/4 of the time whilst he was with his unit, he was in prison for military offences of all kinds, including threatening his superior officer, and he escaped from detention and didn't return. His occupied lodgings in various parts of London and committed thefts as a means of earning a living. In south-west London, he lived with the wife of a soldier at the front and was courting a young girl in a confectionery shop nearby, as well as others in Wimbledon and the district. To one of them he proposed marriage, and at the time of his arrest he was beginning to purchase her trousseau. A series of burglaries occurred at Wimbledon. In every instance, a poker taken from one of the lower rooms formed the only weapon used for forcing locks or doors and drawers. The weapon with which Captain Tighe was murdered was a poker. Chief Inspector Goff perceived the connection between the recent burglaries and the murder, and when D'Estamier was arrested for a burglary at Streatham, he had his lodgings searched, with the result that Captain Tighe's watches and mackintosh were found. Between the time the murder was committed and his arrest, D'Estamier is believed to have committed 5 burglaries. A final reckoning. And so ended the life of Victor D'Estamier, a man whose crimes spanned continents, aliases and victims, but whose undoing came by the bent poker left beside a dying man's bed. Despite his polished lies and shifting names, it was the quiet, methodical work of Scotland Yard that caught up with him, and the everyday details, a stolen watch, a borrowed coat, a noise in the night, and by February 1918, justice had its answer. And the man who once posed as a gentleman's spy, CID officer, and a shadowy suitor met his end, not in mystery, but on the scaffold at Wandsworth Prison. Further particulars. And now from fireplace pokers and Scotland Yard to the emotional bruising of Edwardian romance. Long before the days of Tinder, Bumble, or suspiciously filtered selfies, hopeful hearts had to advertise in the old-fashioned way. In the Matrimonial column, leap year 1916 gave women a rare and socially sanctioned excuse to make the first move, provided, of course, they did so with decorum, dignity, and only minimal references to the larder. Our next tale comes from just such a woman. 50, good-tempered, adaptable and used to servants, but can do without, who dared to seek love via the newspaper and was rewarded with, well, a poacher. a possible imaginary musician, and an elderly gentleman with a fondness for red silk handkerchiefs. If you've ever thought online dating was a wasteland, wait until you hear what passed for courtship in 1917. From the link, the 1st of January 1917, the Matrimonial advertiser. Why is it that when a woman takes advantage of leap year, she invariably is ridiculed and misunderstood? Asked a Titbits reader of the editor recently. My own case proves my statement. Through litigation, I lost my business, good home, and every comfort in life. After trying various posts, I came to the conclusion I could only be happy in a home of my own, and decided to take advantage of leap year, thinking there must be some nice old gentleman that I could make happy. I am a woman of 50, good appearance, and thoroughly companionably good-tempered, and adaptable to circumstances. I have been used to servants, but can do without. I inserted this advert in our local paper, which has 6 editions daily for a week, and only got 6 replies, all of which came from persons inclined to foolery. One obviously from a lot of silly old maids in a boarding house, a most ridiculous letter. They thought that they would have an afternoon's amusement out of me, but they didn't. Another was an illiterate effusion from a well-known hotel. The writer may have been the potman. Apart from another old gentleman who was afraid his income would not be sufficient, he didn't say what it was, but requested a meeting outside the GPO, a red silk handkerchief was to be the sign. As I did not get the letter until 2 hours after the appointed time, and he gave no name or address, that was no good. Another reply came from an extremely countrified place. The spelling and writing were atrocious, and could only be guessed at. Number 5 came from a sporting gentleman, presumably for his recommendation was that he was a good shot and could keep the larder well supplied. Perhaps he was a poacher. The last letter gave me much annoyance. I took the trouble to find out about the writer, and instead of being, as he said, a scholar, musical, the publisher of several books with good income, aged 58, he was a broken-down old man of most shabby appearance, living in a very common part of the town. I summed him up as non compos mentis. Now, honestly, dear editor, don't you think such an advert as mine should have been responded to in a different way to this? I did not see why a woman should not exercise her right to offer herself during the permissible time and be treated with respect instead of ridicule. If you've enjoyed today's episode, do give a like, subscribe to the channel, and perhaps even share it with the person who keeps eyeing your watch a little too appreciatively. It may save them from temptation, or at the very least from an unfortunate headline. And if by some miracle the mysterious magic hype has materialized anywhere on your machine, do give it a click if you can. It became rather like a Victorian ghost train, frequently reported, seldom verified, and always just out of sight behind a wisp of fog. If you'd like to step a little further into the archives, our Patreon doors are open, complete with early ad-free episodes and a library of rather scandalous history you won't find anywhere else. Think of us as your own private reading room, without the drafts, the dust, or the risk of being startled by a passing archivist. Do join us, if only to keep these curious tales coming, one teapot and a scandal at a time. News of the Times, historical crime on patreon.com. This has been News of the Times, and I am Robin Coles. Today's episode was brought to you by the Department of Unscheduled Pokers and Other Domestic Tragedies. And can the last person out please ensure the hamsters are counted twice and given no idea above their station?